Heavy breaths echo in the darkness. The scent of night rain mixes with the musk of bare skin, clinging to every corner of the small room, where only a dim table lamp casts a hazy light on two bodies tangled together in frantic urgency. Cole's hands grip Jenna's hips tightly, pulling her so close it's almost suffocating, while Jenna whispers his name in broken gasps, her fingers trailing softly, then digging into his back as if trying to memorize every single centimeter of his flesh. Outside, thunder rumbles from the end of the street. Footsteps sound faintly in the hallway, making both of them jolt, their hearts pounding wildly out of control. Just a single misstep, just one wrong door opening, and everything will come crashing down. Two families, countless secrets, and the fragile selves they are trying to protect. But Cole doesn't stop, and Jenna doesn't want to let go either. They crash into each other, like addicts desperate for one last taste of the forbidden, trembling with fear, and yet utterly powerless to resist. "Stop, someone will see us," Jenna trembles, whispering the words, but her lips still search for Cole's, hotter than the fire burning inside her chest. Cole presses his lips to her ear, whispering like an unbreakable vow, "I don't care. Right now, I only want you." The sounds, breathless gasps, muffled moans, the friction of cloth against skin, everything is heightened, amplified tenfold, every sensation crackling in the air. And at the peak of their ecstasy, the door handle moves just slightly. A sliver of light from the hallway piercing the darkness, making them freeze, holding their breath, paralyzed with fear. That moment, where overwhelming desire collides with pure terror, where every line has been crossed. This is where all the questions begin to surface. How did they fall so deep into this spiral of forbidden longing? What glance, what invisible current drew these two strangers so dangerously close, making them risk everything they had to lose? And in the end, what is it that they truly crave? A few months earlier, everything had only been a series of simple, harmless routines. Cole had just moved into the new house with his wife and daughter, settling into a quiet neighborhood where every home was painted in bright colors, each yard framed by ivory white fences speckled with bushes of flowers. In those early days, everything felt strange to him. The fading sound of traffic as night fell, the wind chimes tinkling from the neighbor's porch, and above all, the gentle, lonely emptiness that crept in each time he returned home after work. Perhaps if he hadn't been sleepless that night, nothing would have happened. Cole woke up in the middle of the night, restless from vague, unsettled dreams. He stepped outside into the garden, holding a glass of cold water, breathing in deeply to calm the uneasy fluttering in his chest. Darkness enveloped everything, leaving only the gentle light spilling from the window across the street. That was when Cole first saw her, Jenna. She stood pressed up against the window, her slender figure visible beneath a sheer, ivory nightgown. Her hair cascaded softly over her shoulders, her gaze distant and lost in thought, but every so often her eyes would drift toward his garden, as if she were waiting for something. A flicker of curiosity, tinged with a quiet thrill, sparked in Cole's chest. He told himself she was just a neighbor, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from Jenna's alluring silhouette, the dreamy glow tracing every gentle curve, every rising and falling breath beneath the thin fabric. Cole stood motionless, his own breathing slowing. Jenna startled when their eyes met, so quick, so fleeting, yet undeniably electric. She didn't look away, nor did she smile. She simply stood there, her fingers tapping lightly on the glass as if weighing a secret decision. Cole felt the heat rise in his veins, his throat suddenly parched, and, flustered, he slipped back into the shadows of his yard. From that night onward, all of Cole's habits began to change. He would go out into the garden later and later, pretending to trim the plants or water the flowers, all for the chance to catch a glimpse of Jenna through her bedroom window. Every time their eyes met, even by accident, Cole's heart would race, his hands trembling on the handle of his shovel, the hairs on his skin standing on end at the feeling of being watched. Jenna, too, began to alter her little routines. She stayed up later, often leaning against the window frame, sometimes wearing only a backless nightdress, her pale skin bathed in the moonlight. One night, Cole caught a glimpse of Jenna gliding past the window, her delicate gown clinging to every contour of her body. His gaze locked onto her bare back, the curve of her shoulders, the subtle arch of her spine glimmering in the golden bedroom light. In that instant, he realized there was something about Jenna that was both fragile and dangerously enticing, a feeling more intense than anything he'd ever known. There were nights when Jenna would stand with her back to the window, pretending not to notice Cole, only to suddenly turn around, their eyes meeting for a few suspended seconds. This time, Jenna didn't look away. She lifted her teacup to her lips, her smile barely there. Cole felt his lips go dry, his body flush hot, and his mind flooded with unspoken questions. Sometimes, just a stolen glance between two houses was enough to keep him awake the entire night. What seemed harmless at first, night after night, began to grow, slowly consuming him, haunting even his dreams. Cole found himself waiting for Jenna's bedroom light to flicker on every evening, waiting for the moment her shadow would glide behind the curtain, sometimes catching a glimpse of the enticing curves of her soft breasts pressed against the glass. In those moments, his heart would pound erratically, his arm falling limply at his side, the intensity of his longing pushed to its limit. One time, Cole's wife, Sophie, stepped into the garden and gently asked, "You've been coming out here late a lot lately. Is something wrong?" Cole only smiled and brushed it off, but his gaze lingered on the window just beyond the fence. A faint trace of guilt began to creep in, yet it wasn't enough to stop the growing addiction of watching Jenna each night. Jenna was no longer a stranger, either. They started exchanging greetings at the gate, a few polite questions, soft smiles when they ran into each other on the street. But it was only at night, after the windows were closed, that their secret glances truly burned bright, when everything else grew quiet and every mask fell away. On a rainy night, Cole stood in the darkness, watching Jenna place a hand on her chest, biting her lip, her shoulders trembling beneath her nightgown. He could almost hear her heartbeat echo across the street, each pulse out of rhythm blending with the sound of rain tapping at the glass. For the first time in his life, Cole felt himself standing on the very edge of a boundary he'd never dared to approach before. And from that moment, there was no turning back. From those secret glances through the window, Cole and Jenna were pulled into a mutual orbit they could no longer escape. Something had shifted between them, a silent current of electricity that always seemed to snap taut whenever they found themselves sharing the same space. Both knew just how fragile the boundaries were now, but neither was willing to step back. That evening, as dusk settled in, Cole was out in the garden trimming the climbing roses along the fence. The world was quiet, with only the soft sound of wind rustling through the leaves. He had chosen this moment intentionally, as a little ritual he didn't dare to admit, his pulse quickening at every creak of Jenna's door across the way. Jenna appeared on her porch, her hair loose and soft, wearing a light turquoise dress that clung to her body and fluttered gently in the evening breeze. She walked slowly down the stone path, her bare feet brushing the damp grass, her fingers trailing unconsciously along the back of the wooden bench, her eyes drifting toward Cole's yard with a mysterious smile. "Good evening," Jenna's voice was as gentle as a breeze, making Cole pause for a second before answering. "Good evening. The weather's so mild tonight," Cole replied, trying to keep his tone casual, though inside he felt as clumsy as a schoolboy talking to his first crush. Jenna stepped closer to the fence, the garden lights catching her bare shoulders, making them glow in the darkness. A delicate scent from her skin mixed with the aroma of fresh grass and newly cut roses, creating a sweet, haunting atmosphere Cole could barely describe. "Do you like gardening?" Jenna asked, resting her hand on the fence, her neckline dipping low enough to reveal the fragile lines of her collarbone, her fair skin illuminated in the soft light. Her gaze locked with Cole's, direct and honest, with no hint of pretense. "Yeah, it helps me forget about things sometimes," Cole smiled, feeling the heat rise to his cheeks. He rolled his shirt sleeves up to his elbows, his muscular arms gleaming with sweat in the evening light. Jenna leaned gently against the fence, the distance between them shrinking to little more than an arm's length. A stray breeze sent her hair drifting close to his cheek, and her skin was so near that Cole could feel the faint brush of her breath on his own. "Where's your wife?" Jenna asked, her lips curving into a playful, almost wicked smile. "She's inside, and your husband? On a business trip. I hate these long, sleepless nights," Jenna replied airily, but her eyes glimmered with more challenge than ever. Cole bent down, pretending to cut a rose stem, but his palm trembled slightly, the shears grazing the thorny branches as Jenna's gaze seemed to press into the back of his neck. The air thickened between them, as if just one more word would make every mask fall away. Suddenly, Jenna bent closer, feigning interest in a freshly blooming flower. Her shoulder brushed the fence, nearly touching Cole's arm. He could sense the warmth of her skin, a scent richer and warmer than any perfume he'd ever known. They both fell silent in that moment. Jenna tilted her head, her hair falling so close it almost touched Cole's shoulder, her neckline dipping low enough to reveal the curve of a soft breast beneath the thin fabric. Cole swallowed hard, his body tensing in a strange way, his heart thudding wildly in his chest. "Do you want to smell this one? It's a very special rose," Jenna whispered, holding the flower out to Cole, but her hand lingered on his wrist longer than necessary. Her fingers traced lightly along the tanned skin of his forearm before squeezing it gently, sending a shiver up his spine. For an instant, it felt as if they both stopped breathing. Their eyes met, and in that quiet, a slow-burning spark ignited, sweeping away all sense and reason. Cole reached for the rose, but instead of looking at the flower, his gaze lingered on Jenna's lips, soft, glistening, parted as if waiting for a secret invitation. Jenna smiled softly and withdrew her hand, but her eyes stayed locked with his, her red lips trembling as if she was holding back words she dared not speak. She leaned in, exhaled slowly, then turned and slipped into the darkness, leaving Cole frozen, still clutching an unopened rose in his hand. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. His mind was flooded with the memory of Jenna's skin glowing in the garden lights, her breath ghosting across his cheek, the feeling of her fingers gently squeezing his wrist, a dangerous promise lingering in the air. Lying on his bed, he felt a restless ache twisting inside him, his hand unconsciously tracing his stomach, replaying every detail of her skin, her lips, her eyes from that night. An aching hunger began to burn inside him. The addiction to the forbidden was starting to take root. From that moment, Cole's garden became a silent, wordless rendezvous every night. He and Jenna would always find a reason to step outside at the same time, even if just to exchange a few words or sometimes nothing at all, simply standing close enough to feel each other's breath, their eyes sliding over every inch of each other's bodies in the shadows. Their hands would accidentally touch on the shovel handle, fingers brushing as they both reached for a flower, each contact lasting longer than it should, testing the limits of their self-control. One late evening, Jenna wore a gray satin nightdress, her back almost entirely bare, hair twisted up to reveal the pale nape of her neck. She bent down to pick up a fallen flower, the dress slit high to reveal the smooth length of her thigh. Cole tried not to stare, but his heart thudded wildly, heat rising through his whole body. Jenna noticed his hungry gaze, smirked ever so slightly, then brushed past him, her fingertips grazing the back of his hand as she slipped by. For the first time, Cole heard Jenna's quickened breath as she stood so close. That sound, faint as it was, haunted him through a sleepless night. The memory of their brush, their near touch, the blend of skin and earth and night air, it all carved itself into his memory. Night after night, they both found new excuses to wander the garden late, just to feel each other's presence. Sometimes Jenna would gaze at Cole for a long moment, her eyes glimmering in the moonlight, biting her lower lip as if swallowing a confession. Cole realized that every time she did, his mind was consumed by a single thought. If he crossed this line, nothing would ever be the same again. But the addiction to forbidden desire had already kindled, burning softly in every breath, every lingering touch, every furtive glance in a garden cloaked in night and the scent of longing. Both of them knew there was no way back. The secret garden encounters were no longer enough to satisfy the growing hunger inside both of them. When night fell and the windows closed, all those glances, breaths, and accidental touches became an intoxicating drug that left them tossing and turning, restless with longing and unfulfilled desire. That yearning soon began to transcend even the boundaries of physical space, starting with a message, late at night. Lying on his side beside his wife, Cole watched the dim glow from his phone cast light across his face, shadowing Sophie's as she slept, her steady breathing setting a soft rhythm in the background. Cole's heart skipped a beat when the screen flashed with 4 words, "Are you still awake?" Jenna, just 4 words, but it sent Cole's blood racing. He answered softly, "Can't sleep. What about you?" Only seconds later, Jenna sent back a smiley emoji, then followed with, "It's raining again. I hate the sound of rain tapping on the window, but tonight, somehow, it feels kind of sensual." Cole couldn't help but smile, tension pooling low in his stomach. He pictured Jenna lying in her dark room, maybe only in a thin satin nightdress, fingers tapping her phone, messy hair falling across her cheek, lips pressed tight in the shadows. "What are you wearing?" Cole risked, his heart thumping with each word. "Just an old nightdress. It's so thin, I feel cold, I wish." Jenna didn't finish her sentence. Instead, an audio file arrived, a gentle sigh, soft and lingering, echoing through the silence and making Cole shiver. He put in his earbuds, feeling as though Jenna's breath was right at his ear, whispering things meant only for him. He typed again, his fingers moving faster, ignoring the guilt circling in his mind. "Can I see?" Moments later, his phone buzzed. A photo appeared, Jenna sitting on her bed, draped in a thin blanket, bare shoulders exposed, the swell of her breast visible beneath the fabric, eyes staring straight into the camera, lips slightly parted, hair spilling across half her face. No glamour, no pose, just a moment so real it ached, and more seductive than anything Cole had ever seen. A trembling wave ran through his whole body. Without realizing, his hand slipped inside his boxers, moving slowly as his eyes lingered on the photo. "Breathtaking," Cole texted, his whole being overflowing with pent-up desire. That night, the messages stretched on for hours. Jenna confessed she couldn't sleep, told him about the times she'd watched him in the garden, and even admitted, "I once imagined you touching me right there, in the middle of the yard." Cole no longer hid his feelings, writing, "Every night I think about you. About your skin, your breath, the way you whisper to me in the dark outside." They shared everything they couldn't say in real life. Whispers that belonged only to this side of the screen, forbidden wishes, shadowy images that took shape with just a swipe of the finger and filled every corner of their minds. Once, Jenna sent him a voice recording, her breathing quickening, ending with a short, choked moan as if she'd tried to hold it in. Cole replayed that message over and over, feeling as if he were right beside Jenna, his hand trailing down her skin, tracing every burning curve, lips at her ear murmuring her name. He couldn't help himself. He sent her a photo, too, a picture of his strong, bare body in the bathroom, steam fogging the mirror, droplets sliding down his chest and stomach. Jenna replied with a heart emoji and 2 simple words. "I wish." From then on, sexting became their dangerous, inescapable game. Every night, after everyone in the house had fallen asleep, Cole and Jenna dove into their secret conversations, each one bolder, longer, more addictive than the last. There were nights when Jenna would confess to touching herself in the bathroom, her hand moving slowly across her stomach, imagining it was Cole's hand instead, while he messaged back, imagining his own fingers tangled in her hair, pulling her close. They would listen to each other's voices, moans muffled by darkness, even though in reality they were less than 10 meters apart, each lying next to their spouse. During those moments, Cole had to bite his lip to keep from making a sound, his hand clutching the sheets, picturing Jenna's fingers drawing on his skin, each sigh echoing in his ear. After every session, both felt utterly spent, flooded with guilt, but also hopelessly addicted to that forbidden rush. By day, they resumed their roles as normal neighbors, a quick smile on the street, a glance that meant nothing to anyone else. But as soon as darkness fell, every boundary was stretched to the breaking point, every secret spilled back into the glow of a phone screen. One evening, as Cole turned out the light to sleep, Jenna messaged, "If we never stop, what will happen to us?" Cole hesitated for a long time, then wrote back, "If you want, I'll go all the way, even if it means losing everything." From that moment on, they both knew. The distance between fantasy and reality had all but vanished. Sooner or later, every desire would erupt into the real world, with no curtain, no phone screen to hide behind. Only skin, breath, moans, and the kinds of dangers neither could predict. There are some nights when rain makes every sound feel closer, when desires that could only sigh in the dark suddenly become vivid flashes in the storm. That night, the rain poured heavily, wind howling across the rooftop, sweeping away all the fragile precautions Cole and Jenna had built up over the days. Cole had just taken his wife and daughter to visit family, leaving the house empty. No more laughter, only the glow of warm light and the hollow rhythm of a lonely heart. He sat on the sofa, sipping his drink, mind teetering between guilt and longing, until a gentle knock echoed through the rain. Jenna stood there, drenched, her thin nightdress clinging to her skin, raindrops rolling down her neck and collarbone. Her hair was tousled, her lips trembling, her eyes full of worry and longing all at once. I forgot my car keys, can't get in the house, Mark's out of town. Can I borrow a towel? Cole knew it was just an excuse. Both of them understood the real reason ran far deeper, hidden in every glance, in the quickened breaths beneath her soaked nightgown. He let Jenna inside, handed her a towel, his fingers unconsciously brushing her cold, damp hand. In that moment, the scent of wet rain, hair, and skin mingled, freezing time and space around them. Jenna leaned lightly against the wall, trembling as she pulled the towel around her shoulders, arms hugging her delicate body. "Thank you. I'm so cold," she whispered, her voice shaky, but her eyes burned with heat like never before. Cole stared at Jenna for a long moment. All prohibitions, all memories of his wife and child, of her husband, blurred into nothing in that space. He moved closer until only a breath separated them. Her eyes lifted, shining from rain and a hunger she had never dared name. "I should go," she said softly. "Don't," he replied. Cole pressed his lips to Jenna's forehead, then down to her cheek, her mouth quivering under his touch. For the first time, he tasted the rain still clinging to her soft skin, the salt blending with the sweetness at the corner of her lips. Jenna didn't resist. Instead, her arms pulled Cole closer, her fingers digging into his shoulders as if never wanting to let go. They crashed into each other like starving creatures, abandoning every rule, every fear of the world beyond the living room door. Their hungry mouths explored neck, shoulders, and flawless pale breasts, leaving deep red marks on her skin. The friction of fabric against skin, tangled breaths, the heat radiating from their pressed bodies, nothing could stop them now. Jenna shivered as Cole kissed down to her collarbone, sliding the dress from her slender shoulders to reveal her round, aching breasts. She gasped, fingers twisting in his hair, clinging tight as if afraid he'd disappear. Cole murmured her name against her breath, his hands mapping every inch of soft skin, every small mark, every curve he'd dreamed of for countless nights, now finally real. They stumbled upstairs to the bedroom, bare feet on cold wood, kissing hungrily, stripping away every last layer of clothing as they went. In the dark room, only the golden light shone on Jenna's body, her skin glowing in shadow, eyes half closed, lips parted for every deep, hungry kiss. Cole laid Jenna back on the bed, her tousled hair splayed on the white pillow. He bent low, kissing along her spine, hands sliding from hip to waist, tugging the blanket over her hips. She moaned softly, legs winding around him, arching her back to meet every thrust, every wave of surging desire. "Don't stop, I need you," Jenna gasped, her moans mixing with the rain outside, their own private symphony. Cole lost all control. He entered her slowly, feeling every trembling spasm, every crest of pleasure rolling through them both. They melted into one another, all thoughts, all lines of morality dissolving into raw, primal lust. Jenna's cries filled the dark, her hands pulling Cole to her chest, her legs locked around his back, both losing themselves to the storm of passion. Every thrust, every slap of skin, every breath, every friction of sheets in the closed room made the fear of being discovered even more suffocating. Just one sound from the hallway and everything would collapse, but it was exactly that danger that made them wilder, more desperate, more addicted. After the climax, they lay together, naked bodies entwined, breathless, sweat mingling with leftover rain. Jenna turned to Cole, trailing her fingers gently across his chest, eyes red with emotion, whispering in the dark. "I never thought I would do this, but I don't want to stop." Cole pulled her close, brushing his lips over her forehead. Outside, the rain still fell, hiding the birth of their sin. In that moment, they both understood neither would ever be the same. Forbidden love had crashed through every barrier, every line, becoming an addiction neither could run from. From the very first night in that locked room, every old boundary had shattered. For Cole and Jenna, the forbidden was no longer just a secret game. It was now reality, a sweet wound that neither wanted to heal. Both of them were utterly addicted to each other, to the fear, to the obsession, to that sinful pleasure that only those who dare to cross the line could ever understand. In the days that followed, Jenna no longer hesitated when she bumped into Cole in the garden. Her gaze at him was both challenging and gentle, always laced with something dangerously tempting. On some afternoons, with sunlight slanting through the trees, Jenna would stand on her porch in a tight t-shirt and shorts, leaning back against a column, twisting a lock of hair around her finger, just a casual gesture. But in Cole's eyes, it conjured 100 wild memories from that night. They always had to play the part of innocent neighbors in front of everyone else. A light nod, a polite greeting, a bland smile. But as soon as night fell, their instincts awoke, more ravenous than ever. Every night, the yellow glow from Jenna's window was the signal. Cole would turn off every light in his bedroom, leaving just a narrow slit in the curtain, enough to watch the room across from his. Once, fresh out of the shower with his body still damp and a towel wrapped around his hips, Cole stood by the window, moonlight shimmering on his skin. He knew Jenna was watching him, could almost feel her breath through the glass. His phone buzzed. "You're gorgeous. You're driving me crazy." Cole texted back, "Wanna show me too?" Moments later, Jenna stepped up to her own window in a white silk nightgown, no bra, her soft breasts visible beneath the thin fabric. She turned on her bedside lamp, leaned close to the glass, and smiled. No one but them knew about this nightly, dangerous game: raw gazes, silent kisses through the glass, breaths and stifled moans echoing in the silent night. Some nights, Jenna would sit on her bed, hike her dress up to her hips, fingers sliding between her thighs, eyes locked on Cole. She'd send him a short video. The sound of a sigh, a stifled moan, her body trembling with pleasure only Cole could plant in her mind. He'd watch it over and over, his hand moving in rhythm with his fantasies, both of them climaxing on either side of the glass, holding their breath for fear of being caught. But the more dangerous it felt, the more addictive it became. This obsession made them both reckless. Once, Jenna texted, "Your wife's coming home soon. Is there anything you want before she's back?" Cole replied, "Step out onto your balcony, just 2 minutes." Jenna slipped outside, wrapped only in a towel, standing close to the rail. Cole stepped onto his own balcony opposite her, night wind rushing between their bodies, eyes locked together. They couldn't touch, but in that moment, the feeling of owning each other was even more powerful than any act of lovemaking. Another night, when Mark came home unexpectedly, Jenna only had time to send one quick message: "Don't text. I'm scared." Cole curled up in the dark, heart racing with loss, addiction, and anger. He realized he couldn't live without Jenna, without those forbidden glances each night, without masturbating for her through the glass, without the breathless suspense of almost getting caught. But danger was closing in more each day. One night, Sophie, Cole's wife, walked into the bedroom while he was watching through the curtain and asked quietly, "You're not sleeping again? You've been acting strange lately." Cole stammered, hiding his phone and pretending to read the news. Inside, a mix of fear and excitement surged. One slip, and everything would collapse. Jenna couldn't escape the pressure either. Mark grew suspicious when she was often late, her phone always on silent. More than once he asked, "Are you hiding something from me?" Jenna could only laugh it off, but panic churned inside her. Forbidden love was no longer just a craving of the body, but an obsession of the mind. Everywhere Cole went, he thought about Jenna, the scent of her skin, her moans, her lips clamped tight in climax, her dreamy eyes through the window. Every time he went into the garden, his hand trembled, remembering the feel of Jenna's touch under the garden lights. On nights when they couldn't see each other, both were restless, agitated, sleepless, like addicts in withdrawal. One night, unable to take it anymore, Cole texted softly, "I want you right now." Jenna replied only with a finger-on-lips emoji, then sent a short voice note. Heavy breaths, silk fabric sliding over skin, moans stifled by her hand. Even that was enough to make every nerve in Cole's body strain tight, every inch of skin burning. He lay in bed, eyes closed, imagining Jenna right beside him, her breath on his neck, her legs locking around his hips, moans filling the darkness, trembling with a hunger that had no name. Forbidden love had become a part of their lives, a nightly ritual, an obsession that neither could let go. They knew discovery was close, but the more afraid they became, the more they clung to each other. And it was that very feeling, balanced between lust and disaster, that kept them bound together. There were nights when, even lying next to his familiar wife, Cole still couldn't sleep. In the darkness, his mind was filled with images of Jenna, her soft breasts gliding across the window, the sound of her gasping breath through the phone, the feeling of her tongue on his skin, her wild eyes, and above all, that moment when their bodies tangled together in a silent room, where everything belonged to the forbidden. The closer they became, the greater the risk of being discovered. After the time Mark almost caught Jenna, they both became more cautious, but their addiction to the forbidden never lessened. Instead, it transformed into stolen rendezvous. Hurried sex in the garage, oral on the balcony, masturbating for each other over video from just a street apart. Each time, the fear only made the pleasure burn even brighter. And then, everything shattered in a single careless moment. That night, Jenna stepped into the garden, thinking her husband was asleep. She wore a thin satin nightdress, headphones in to listen to Cole's voice. They whispered their secret desires, not knowing that Mark, suspicious of petty theft in the neighborhood, had installed a security camera in the backyard days before. Every image, Jenna leaning against the fence, fingers slipping beneath her dress, her soft moans caught by the microphone, was recorded. Mark woke in the middle of the night, checked his phone, and cold fury exploded inside him. The next morning, Cole was jolted awake by the furious ringing of the doorbell. There was Mark, eyes bloodshot, phone clutched tightly in his hand. "I've seen everything. You and her, did you think you were clever?" Fear rushed over Cole, making his throat close up. Jenna stood behind her husband, eyes red and swollen, hand pressed to her chest as if trying to hide every trace of guilt still lingering on her skin. Sophie, too, couldn't escape the truth. She listened quietly as Mark recounted everything, her own eyes glazed with shock, lips trembling, as if a part of her world had just collapsed. There was nothing left to justify, nothing to defend, only tears, anger, and an emptiness that squeezed each heart tight. In the days that followed, everything turned upside down. Jenna was cut off from all contact by her husband, her phone closely monitored, cameras installed everywhere in the house. Cole had to face Sophie's suspicious gaze, the pain and disappointment that would never fade. What had once been a sweet, forbidden love now became a poison, eating away at them cell by cell, through every sleepless night, every memory of a touch from the past. But even with all the secrets laid bare, the addiction still wouldn't release them. Jenna secretly sent Cole a letter, hidden beneath the rose bush in his garden, her handwriting shaky but fierce. "I miss you. Every night I imagine you calling my name, your kisses on my skin, the way we trembled together in the darkness. Even though it's over, I still can't stop loving you, can't stop missing you." Cole read the letter in silence, sitting alone on his front steps. Outside, the light from Jenna's room spilled across her window, but for the first time, no one was waiting for him there. Yet in his heart, every forbidden feeling, every pleasure, every haunting memory of Jenna still burned, a wound that refused to heal. On the final night, Cole stood at his window, looking across to the opposite house, watching as Jenna's light slowly faded. Outside, the night wind drifted by, carrying the scent of roses and the echo of a distant sigh. He closed his eyes, wondering, if he could go back, would he step into that forbidden world again? The answer remained only a silent ache in his heart, for forbidden love, once tasted, can never truly be let go.